All the roads are windy.
Welcome to the show, Liliana. I am so excited and curious about what's going to come up today, and I get to talk to you. Thanks for being our guest.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Totally. So would you like to start with an invocation?
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to invite all of you at this time to get present with your breath and with your body. And as you breathe in, just begin to notice any emotions or sensations that come up within the body, any thoughts or memories. And on this next breath, I'd like for you to think of a color that makes you feel safe and secure, and direct that color with your breath down into your root, into the base of your spine, allowing that to fill up that space. As you breathe in, this colored light, this colored breath begins to move up your body, up through your abdomen, up into your lungs, filling your heart space. Moving up now to your throat, to your third eye, up into your crown, filling your entire body. Now this colored light, this colored breath flows over, out of your crown, washing over your entire body, cleansing you. Any static, residual energy, emotions, physical sensations that have been stored within the body. Leaving you clear and with peace. Deep breath in and exhale. Thank you.
So nice. I could hang out there.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's begin by hearing, who are your ancestors?
Yeah. So both of my parents were born in Mexico, and I have indigenous roots on both sides, my mother and my father. And then I have European roots on my mother's side. So like most folks from like Spain. And then ancestry, such like a beautiful, complex subject, you know? So talking to my mom and like talking to one of my tias, trying to figure out more of like where I come from, they had mentioned like, oh, you know, your great, somewhere along like the great grandparents, there was like French or information of someone being French. And so I questioned that because, you know, my mom's the youngest of 10, and a lot of them have transitioned over. And my one tia aunt, who I like refer to, has all this information. She's kind of, you know, she's getting older, and so stories change. So I decided like to do the ancestry DNA thing, and so that whole thing is wild because, and like a lot of stuff comes up, right? So like there was there's the indigenous Mexican roots, and then there's like the Spanish roots, and then there was a little bit of French. So I like told my tia, and she was just like, I told you. And I was like, okay, cool. And then there was like a bunch of other stuff. So I'm just a mixed bag, but I feel really connected to my Mexican roots, and I acknowledge my Spanish roots. I think just with my own journey, I felt a lot of almost guilt, for knowing the history, or like of what what we learn. And I held a lot of like pain and guilt for that. But I'm learning, okay, we have to heal all sides, and it's really important. I can't turn my back to any of it because it's all in me. So,
right. Integrate. Right. Wow. Amazing. I love that your aunt was validated in that way.
Oh yeah. She kept telling me, she's like, no, but I'm like, well, where? Like, what is like a name? And then I felt bad, of course, because I'm like, I'm questioning her, and it's like, and then in the back of my mind, it's like, don't question your elders, just trust, what they're saying. And so yeah, she's pretty stoked.
That's great. Wow. And where do you live, and who are the people who originally tended and stored it and lived on that land?
So I live in Modesto, California. It's in Central Valley. And the original stewards were the Yokets. And where I'm at, they are the Northern Valley Yokets.
Cool.
Yeah.
Amazing. I think that's the first time I don't think I've interviewed anyone from the Central Valley yet, so it's the first time I've heard that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think something that's really, really drew me to you was that you are so led by intuition and so connected to just how intuitive guidance can inform your life and your everyday life. And is this something that you always have been connected to, or did this awaken at some point in your life?
I love that question. I think it's something that, like, not just me, but I think all of us have been connected to that, I think, from a young age, from childhood, right? And I was thinking about this actually, like, the other day, of how when we see a child, we always say, wow, they have such a great imagination. And how I view it is that imagination is their intuition. I remember being little, and like even like one of my little cousins, they'd always just make note of, oh, look at them playing with, like, talking to the trees and like talking to plants, or like seeing whatever they're seeing and just pursuing everything based on what they feel in their heart and what they feel is best for them. And I think for me, when I was a kid, that's when there was never a question of like, I'm of the earth is of me. And I not just did what I wanted because I was a kid, it was just, I felt that voice, I felt that call, and then, you get into school and like you go through adolescence, and you're just kind of like, it's either too much or it's just hard, so you kind of disconnect. So I disconnected a bit when I was, in my adolescence. And then I kind of really went back into trusting it when I started like my healing journey in my 20s. Like, I didn't know how to deal with things that I experienced in life. And then I just hit like a point where the knock was so loud that it was like, hey, you need to listen to yourself. You need to listen to us. You need to listen to your body, to what's communicating to you. And that's when I would say, like, I woke up again. And from that point on, that's pretty much what's led me to here talking to you, right? Like, so, yeah, I would say my healing journey is just being more of like being reawoken.
What did that look like when the knock was knocking and the call was calling and you couldn't ignore it anymore?
So it was more, it actually was more like a feeling. Like, it literally felt like a physical sensation of like, hey, like being shook, and I could feel and like hear, it sounded like my voice. Like, I knew it wasn't me, of like whether it was my guides or my ancestors at the time, just saying, you need to wake up. Like what you're doing is not okay. And not even just like what I was doing was harming myself. It wasn't that. It was more of like, you're not on the right path. You need to move and transition to something different. And so, and even, I guess I would say too, that like, I just reached a point where I was so discontent with what I was doing. And I felt like this call of there's something else. But, like in my dreams too, there was like like actual knocking, like the sound, like knock, 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 you know? And so, yeah. And I think grief, I was like really having a hard time dealing with grief. And grief is such a beautiful thing because it can, if we can transmute that grief into something more, I don't want to say like productive, but powerful, transmute that energy, we can just, we can do so much with it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, grief. It's such a big theme right now. Like yesterday, this will be months when this goes out. It'll be a couple months ago by the time. But yesterday in our collective, we had this spontaneous just arising of people needed to express their grief, so we held a grief ritual, and it was so powerful. And it's just like that transmutation you speak of, like in my own body. When I expressed it, I felt this like involuntary shaking, and it's just like I felt like when a dog shakes itself or an animal shakes itself after something happens, and they just like shake. And it was so cool to just feel like that transmutation. What was some of your own approach to being with your grief and allowing that to come up and out and flow and transform?
So when I speak about like the beginning of my healing journey, that was when I lost this was a father figure of mine. And he was such an important member of our family. And when I decided to, like, how I decided to use that grief was towards, I use that as like fire, like to give me confidence of like, I mean, like how would I feel if he saw what I was doing right now, and he pursued everything that he wanted with such passion and calling in on his spirit to do the same for myself. And so then that's when I like went back into my spiritual practices and like picking up my tarot deck again and turning that anger into something that's more constructive rather than like tearing down myself.
Mm-hmm.
And like recently, like 2 weeks ago, I lost one of my beloved fur babies, and that, it's okay, thank you. That I had a really hard time with because it brought up that same level of grief that was felt with losing Walter. It was the same level of grief I experienced when I lost my father figure, and I caught myself like, okay, you can't go back to like what you used to do. And that pain of losing Walter motivated me to like I'm working on an oracle deck. So I was like, okay, you need to get back to working on that oracle deck. You need to start finishing the projects that you have that's been on the shelf for like the last year. You need to like do all of that. So with this recent grief, it's really been a creative push for me. Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. And I don't know if this has been your experience. It sounds like it, but just how acknowledging the pain of that loss can help galvanize and clarify what you really care about, what really matters to you. And I hear that's some of what's happened for you. And you're like, wait, I can't just tear myself down and give up on this. It's like, I care. It like lights the fire of caring.
Yeah, definitely. And there are other things too. I was talking, speaking with my partner about, because he's been having a hard time with it as well. And it's done the same thing for him, and it might sound silly to folks because, most people are like, oh, it's just a pet, but
oh my gosh, no way. It's a fur baby. Like, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm. And so a lot of things now that we just want to do it for him in like memory for him, because yeah. And it's important to do that, you know, not get lost in that grief, because grief is wild.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Spiralic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Tell us about your spiritual practices. You know, you said that you do tarot and well, yeah, tell us about them. I don't need to guess them.
Yeah. So like I was saying earlier, like I connect with the earth a lot. Like I work with the elements in the earth. And I mean, my spiritual practice, it's just really simple. You know, every day I check in with my body. I like communicate with like my spiritual team. I'll pull cards, and there are times when I sit at my altar where I'm just sitting in bed and I'm just thinking about the collective and like trying to connect with the energy and focusing on sending healing. But plants have been the biggest thing for me, really. You know, being in the garden, like that's part of my spiritual practice too. And like I like to keep it really simple. Like I have moments where there are times when it's more ritual based, right? But I like to, for me, I'm a simple person, so I like to keep it simple, and just checking in with my body and just being outside is enough for me.
I mean, legit. And that's the beauty of a spiritual practice is it doesn't have to be complicated or complex or some big grandiose gesture. It can be those simple everyday things. So yeah. And yeah. Yeah. When did your tarot journey start? Was that something your family grew up doing, or did you find it on your own?
No. Growing up, so my family, we're raised Catholic, not really strict Catholic. Like with my mom, it was, well, you know, my parents are Catholic, so we're Catholic, but it wasn't a strict household. And I got my first deck when I was 14. And it was given to me by a friend in high school. Her mom's friend, who was like her medium or like psychic advisor, gave it to her. She didn't want it because it was like taboo to them. So then I was like, I'll take it. So I took it and started with, I didn't know what I was doing. Now looking back at it, I was using my intuition, like my intuitive muscles, without even realizing it. And then I put the deck down when I was 18, 19. I like did a reading for a friend. Then they got into an accident later. And so I thought, oh my God, that naively, and listening to them, I was just like, oh, I did that. I caused that. I like created that energy. And so I didn't pick them back up until I was 23, 24. And then from that point on, I haven't put them away.
What was the mindset shift you went through from feeling like, you know, you caused that accident or called in that energy to being able to pick it back up again? What changed?
That loss of my father figure,
Mm-hmm.
like that was the biggest thing, because that brought me so much comfort. Like I felt like the tarot is an extension of myself, and that's what it felt like when I was younger and using them. And that was such a big part of my healing journey as well. It was like that person, that companionship that I needed, someone to talk to who could listen, that wouldn't judge me. And so that's what I turned to when I lost him, just for that guidance, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now, you know, looking at tarot now, what's your view on like if something happens in someone's life, was it caused by your reading? You know, what's your view or perspective on that? What's happening there?
So how I view it now, and it's funny how it's shifted, because the way I use the tarot now is to get a sense of how energy is moving within the body of folks, and like what's living within like their mind, body, and spirit. So if something were to happen, I laugh at it now, like, no, things, we're responsible for our own actions, certain things, right? And then there are just some things that happen, and I would never blame a deck or pendulum or anything like that being the cause of it. It's more of like, here's an energy, but I can't tell you that this is exactly what's going to happen, you know, and it's because of this. So, yeah.
It's more like the tarot is being able to mirror kind of the potentials hanging out around your energy field. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that was a big fear for me too, getting into like when I was, because I got my first deck as a teenager and I was so kind of scared and ashamed of them in a way that I got like a mini Rider-Waite deck. It was like 2 inches by one, you know, like 2.5 inches by 1.5 inches or something. It was a cute little deck. But I was like so secretive and scared. I was like, is this going to like cause things? And I think that's probably a pretty common misconception that people have around divination of any kind.
Oh, for sure. A lot of the folks that I've read for, I was the first person that they've let read for them because of that, because of the fear. And especially like, I mean, not only Catholic households, but, you know, yeah, a lot of my clients, they were nervous and scared and thinking, oh my gosh, am I like sinning? Like, you're not sinning. You know, it'd be the same, how I look at it, it's like, it's the same thing if you were praying to, or using a rosary and you're praying and you're trying to communicate. It's just a different medium. It's a different tool, you know?
Yeah, right. Different way that spirit can speak to us.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Like, hey, wake up, y'all.
Yeah. Seriously, sometimes it's like, it's like that. It's intense and it's like, okay, I hear you. Like, thank you for that. Roughness. Yeah.
So I'm really curious to hear, what is something, I'm going to ask kind of a big question. So if you're not comfortable with this, fine. But what is something that's maybe like an edge for you that's, you know, or like that swinging bridge that you just kind of have to jump off of and fly or float with the water down below, like, and trust, like, what's something going on in your life that's like that right now, that hidden self, that's the edge that's coming out, that cliff. Yeah.
I think, and it's so funny because I'm huge on like advocating that we all need to trust ourselves and trust, you know, what's coming through. But at the same time, for myself, I have to remember that because I think it's always just being enough, you know, like is what I'm creating enough for people? Is the space that I'm holding enough for people? Do I know enough to be doing what I'm doing? And then like that's those little voices where it's like, okay, yeah, that's not real, right? That's not fact. It's a feeling. But I would say, yeah, like especially the Oracle deck that I'm working on right now. Like it's been almost 2 years, and I actually like scrapped the first. I like finished the first round. I was like, no, I don't like this. This does not feel connected with who I am right now. I'm gonna start over. So I just started over. And I'm almost done, but that's the biggest thing. I'm like, I'm creating for myself. This whole process is part of my healing journey right now. And it's to just trust that what I'm creating and what I'm receiving to create is not only for myself, but there may be folks out there who need it as well. And if it's not received, then it's not received. It's okay. It's for me.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And that's amazing. And from that, are you doing the illustrations, or are you doing the words? Like, are you doing it all? What are you actually doing?
I'm doing it all.
Oh, wow. Well, do you have any examples you can show us? I guess people on the video can see it, but or is it not ready to be revealed? That's fine.
It's not ready to.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I know, that's cool. Do you, what was the inspiration from it? Like, how did you hear the call? Oh, create an Oracle deck.
So it's one of those things where, like, you know, you hear that little, it's in the back of your mind, like, hey, maybe you should do that. And then you perceive it as, oh, it's just me. Like, it's something I want to do. And then, when I started sitting in meditation, there was one where I was trying to connect with like a guide of mine and just asking, you know, what is it that I need to do? What am I meant to, that infamous question, what am I meant to do in this life? What is my life purpose, right? And so, excuse me, that's when he said, he's like, you need to create an oracle deck, and it's going to be for this. And then that's just how I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. So.
Wow. Okay. And working with your guides, like, do you know who your guides are? Like, how do you sense their different energies? What's that relationship look like? Can you like kind of get granular and take us there?
Yeah. So with my one specific, like, it's definitely energy. It's all about like how it feels within the body. Like, that's what I pay attention to the most, is how do things feel in my body. And so there are some where I get like a tingling, like spiky sensation along the left side of my body. And so that's when I know it's like, okay, this time it's like, these are my guides speaking to me. And then like when my grandma is speaking to me, I can hear her in my, and again, it sounds like my voice, but it's a different tone, or yeah, it's a little bit warmer sounding, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that, and I can feel her energy, and it feels a lot more just warm and inviting. So it's all really felt within my body, and just paying attention to where am I feeling it? What does it feel like? And then I just have this, like, I just know it's them. They're like, okay, or I even ask, like, okay, is this, like, who is this, and then I just wait to hear or feel what it is.
Right. Mm-hmm. Who's there? Who are you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how did you, I think I love this, because I think that's the kind of area where people get confused. They're like, they don't realize that the voice just sounds like their voice, but it has a different kind of tone or energy or quality to it. And it comes with an energy in their body that they can sense, like, oh, it's a guide. Like, this isn't just me talking to myself. Like, so how did you learn to differentiate that? Was that a process for you, or?
Yeah. What I did was I just started creating like a little like glossary or library for myself.
Cool.
This is what it feels like, or when I got this thought, this is what it felt like in my body. This is where I felt it in my body. And then me paying attention to what, how did the voice sound in my head? So, and like, how did it feel? When I know it's myself, I find that the emotion, like, there's my own emotion attached to the feeling or to the words that I'm hearing, right? When it's like my guides or, like my spiritual team, I can feel an emotion, but it's separated from my own emotion. There's no like emotional attachment for myself. And then there's this sense of like just certainty, and like, this is as a matter of fact, this is what it is. When it's myself, and I'm like, is it though? Like, questioning. Yeah. And it just, the feeling within the body feels so different. There's almost like anxiety when it's myself, and there's just this confidence of an innate knowing and trust and that's when it's them.
Mm-hmm. And how often do you speak with your guides?
All the time.
Like every day, like all day, or you're like, what's up? I need, like, how do you speak to them? Do you ask them for things? Do you tell them, like, what does that actual dialogue look like?
I just talk to them like they're a member of my family, or like someone who's living in the house. Like, I'll wake up and say hi with my ancestor altar. It's them. I like greet them every morning, give them their stuff, say good morning, and like, if I'm wanting like advice and it's like serious information, I'll sit down, I'll grab my tarot deck and like do the whole process of like creating the space and really trying to connect and get like detailed information. But for the most part, it's throughout the day, washing the dishes, just, and if I hear something, I'm like, okay, I heard that. What do you mean by that? And just creating conversation. Oh, it's just like they're always there, and just not physically seen. But yeah.
Do you ask them for support and stuff? Like, do you ask them to like help you do things, or you're like, hey, I need help with this?
Oh yeah. Especially like, and I go through this right before the new moon, I always go through this, like a few days of where I'm really hard on myself and just doubting myself and just feeling like I'm not enough. And I know it's not real. Like, I know it's not fact. I'm just aware of, okay, this is just that time where I'm going to go through this and I'm moving through it. So I always ask them, like, just please, like, just support me. Like, lend me like your emotional strength, or just give me something as like a little friendly reminder, like just, or help me ground out, like just something. Or even like little things where I don't know what to do with something. Like, I don't know what to do, you know? Part of the Oracle deck, that was a big communication with them as well, was like me sharing, this is an emotion that I feel like that needs to be shared. This is a word. Can you share with me? Like, what drawing would you like to see? Or what words need to be shared? And that was something too, so they would share that. Yeah. It's honestly just like having a sibling or just someone there all of the time and me just asking them questions or just like even saying hi. Like I'll like them like, oh hi. And yeah, I'll be eating dinner with my partner and I'll just like, okay, yeah, I got that. And then I look over him like, oh, I said that out loud, huh?
That's so funny. Oh my gosh, that's funny. That's a past guest on our show, Sarah Wu, has this thing that she calls New Age Girl problems, and that sounds like once like when you accidentally respond to your guides out loud in front of other people like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, like so before, like other than my spiritual practice, like I've been a hairstylist for almost 9 years, and I like do that. Well, not now because like you know
COVID,
pandemic,
right?
but prior to that, I was doing it for like part time doing that. And I'd be at work and they'd be like, oh yeah, Lily just talks to herself. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just talking to myself. And I'm like, and no, I'm talking to my clients. But you know, whatever. And then my clients, they know, they're like, no, she's not talking to herself. Like, so it's funny.
That's probably why they come to you, because you're magical and connected, and they, you know, it's like that quality that they're not necessarily getting like a magical consultation in a haircut, but it's like, oh, you know,
yeah,
element of that,
yeah,
that attraction. Yeah, I love that. You know, I think something that like kind of like how you said your spiritual practices are simple. Also, like speaking with guides and getting support from guides is really simple, but it just takes that practice of attuning to that energy. Like you said, like you learned, you had your, you know, you took notes. Like you literally took notes and created that reference so that you could tell, like, oh, okay, that's what it takes. That's what I tell people. I'm like, you know, you got to like learn this language. And I love that you have just this beautiful example of that, of and how that relationship has evolved from just kind of a sensation into like full on just relationship, like connection with them and support. What are some of the, I think something that people might wonder about sometimes is like, how do I get like tangible, how do I, because like sometimes all this intuitive stuff can seem very like airy fairy and very just like energy, but like what are some of the tangible, quantitative, concrete evidence or effects of that spiritual support in your life?
I would say like okay, it's gonna sound, and I know it's one of those subjects where I think people get so frustrated because it's like it is really hard to have that tangible physical thing in front of you. A lot of it is just trust. You just have to trust and not question. You know, you chose to go down a street and you saw like the place that you always want to work at is hiring. Like that is physical evidence. In your mind, you're like, that's not real. Like, but it is. It's a physical thing right in front of you, you know? And that's how I view everything. Like, okay, there's a reason why I maybe have been thinking about a certain subject or have had a certain question, and then all of a sudden, like, I run into a person and then they said, like, they're validating what I'm feeling, or they mentioned something and I, you know, okay, that's a physical thing. The fact that this person just even said a word or spoke about something that they don't know I've been thinking about, that makes it solid for me now, you know? Like, okay, so for an example would be like the house that I live in now. My partner and I, had been like looking for a house for like a few months, and then we did like a spell together, and then we ended up finding this house. And I'm a big person, like I'm huge on energy, like how my body like speaks to me. We walked in and it felt really good. But then it's such a big act. You're like, I don't know. Is it the right space, you know? And then like, as we're like looking around the house and like the front yard and the backyard, I start noticing plants, you know? I'm like, oh, okay. This reminds me so much of the house that I grew up on when I was a kid. There's an olive tree in the front of the house. There's a bougainvillea on the side of the house. Like I had that growing up. And then when we moved in, I didn't even notice there's a gardenia bush in front of the house. And that was my grandma's favorite flower. And she used to grow them. And I didn't know that until like I spoke to my mom and I was sharing her about, I was like, Mom, look, there's like the olive tree. And she's like, yeah, there's a gardenia. Like that was, Abuela's favorite plant. She used to grow them. I'm like, and I like just cried because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is a physical proof that yes, this is where I'm meant to be, even though I might not have necessarily thought like long-term that this is where I would live. This is where I'm supposed to be like for sure right now.
Right. And that's beautiful. And I hear in what you're saying, I hear that it's like, this is my own experience too. I'm adding my own awareness and experience to this too, but just it's almost like a paradigm shift of, instead of being like, I don't know, like what's a concrete example of something you can do in your life? It's like, I wanted a soda, so I bought a soda. Like, and there you have the evidence with a soda. It's like so boom, boom, boom. Like you had the desire, you went to the store, you had it, and now it's in your hand. Like it's like, and in my case, I would say like a flavored water, but no shame on people drinking soda, but then it's like a paradigm shift of like, okay, it's not always this immediate linear thing. It's more that this connection with the spirit world and with your guides changes the energy of everything you're doing in your life, that it like directs energy. And like you said, you might be talking to someone and they might say a word or validate something or give you information that you needed that they didn't even know you needed. And it's about how your connection with the spirit world influences and affects all of the interactions that you have with the world around you in a way. And maybe not every single one. I don't know. Maybe it does. I have no idea. But the ones that like matter, they have that quality, and it like, it just becomes, it's just inherent in your everyday little decisions that it's not like always this big thing, like, boom, you have the evidence. Like, it's not like, oh, show me the house. And then they're like, you go to the Zillow or whatever, and then they're like, it's this house. It's not always that like blatant, but it's that energy shifts and you start to notice that you're just directed to these things, and these things become directed to you.
Yeah, especially when we let go of control, like needing to control and like have that physical proof, like the expectation of what we want it to look like or need it to look like. Once we let go of that and give into trust, then we start seeing that there's so much physical proof in front of us. It's just, we always want to control what it looks like.
Right. And we want it fast moving now, and we want it absolutely like concrete, like with neon signs pointing at this is it, like,
yeah, because it'd be so much easier. Like you can't miss it, With the other way, yeah, I feel like there are definitely moments where you can miss something because we're so fixated on something else, So, yeah.
Right. That's that control.
Yeah. That's something I had to learn to like let go of. I like a sense of control. Even if I don't have control over the environment, that was always something that like I need to be in control of the situation. Like I need to know the timing. I need to know like who's going to be there. And yeah, that was a rough way to live for a long time. It was so stressful. And I felt like it helped with my anxiety, but it actually did the opposite. And then, after letting go, I'm just going with whatever. I mean, there's still moments where I'm going to be like, I need to know who's going to be there. Or at least just get an idea, just so I feel safe. So I know what to prepare for.
Right.
But yeah.
Right. I think it's going from a shift from needing to control to being in your agency, where it's like, okay, I know that like there's no certainty in life there except for death and taxes, right? Like, and then you really can't control anything. You have agency where you can make choices and take actions, and you can make those choices and take actions from a certain place, and that's your control. But it's like you can't control that outer world. And I think, having information helps. But I had to make that shift too, of like going into my agency instead of being like, oh, I'm going to control everything, and like just trusting. Trust is huge. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and once you do that, it honestly just opens the door to everything else. And then like everyone's, how do I connect with my intuition? Am I an intuitive person? Do I have intuition? We all have it. It's just trust yourself and trust what's coming in.
Yeah. What message might you have for the control freak in the audience right now? What message, who's like, okay, well, yeah, you say it's so easy, but make it look so easy, but how do I actually trust?
Well, I love that you said that, because it does look easy, but it wasn't easy. Like, it was so hard. I just had to have that conversation with myself of, you needing to control this makes it so much harder. Look at how unhappy you are. What's more important? Like the fear of not knowing the environment of a situation, or knowing the environment and still having like heightened anxiety now. You know what I mean? So it's just getting real with myself and just accepting that this is going to probably be difficult, and it's going to take a while for me to get adjusted to it, but I'll feel so much better afterwards. And if that doesn't work, then I can figure something else out to help me let go of that control, like baby steps. You don't have to do it all at one time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In that, I wonder, was there a sense of safety you had to find in yourself, maybe, that like, did you have to learn how to feel safe in yourself?
Yeah, I think yeah. I always had that role of, I'm the one that has to be strong for other people and be supportive for other people, right? And I didn't give that back to myself, and so I would turn to other individuals or things to make me feel safe. And it was part of that same conversation, like similar conversation that I had with control, is these things make me feel like I'm safe, but at the end of the day, I still feel like I'm not supported. So what can I do? The only thing that ever really did make me feel safe, and the relationship was with my tarot deck, and with the relationship with like plants, and that, because it forced me to connect with myself, and it forced me to trust myself, and to see that like at the end of the day, like I love my family and I love my partner, but like I'm what's important, and I'm all that I have. And I mean that not in like a negative way of like there's no one here for me. It's like, yeah, I have tons of people who love me, but at the end of the day, I have to be able to support myself and my own healing, and be my own healer, and be my own support system. Be my own lover,
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Tell us more about that relationship with the tarot and the plants, and how that sparked that safety.
Well, with plants, I mean, that's part of like connecting with my ancestors too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, my mom, she has like the greenest thumb, and it was something that I always admired. And, you go to her, like I go to her house anytime I go, I'm like, yeah, look at your yard. It looks like a park back here, and everything's like thriving, and things that when I was taking care of the space never bloomed, and now that she's there taking care of the space and I'm not, they're like blooming, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And so it was something that I felt like, I mean, even though my mother's present, I can feel like I have like my ancestors within these plants, and then it reminds me of like, this is where I come from, and they're a part of me, I'm a part of them. Look at their resilience and their strength. I have that too.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just created that, like it deepened that level of trust and deepened that love for myself. And with the tarot, again, it was just being able to like learn about myself, forcing me to be present with things that maybe like I knew were present within my body, within my mind, but maybe I just kind of overlooked, and it forced me like, no, you need to pay attention to this if you're going to be honest and be real with yourself. And yeah, that just gave me that extra oomph and like kick in the butt that I needed and still need sometimes,
Right. It's a journey. It's always unfolding.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it, though. It's
Oh,
like
for sure.
a layer and there's another.
Yep, exactly.
There's no destination.
No. And I
And
think that's where people get hipped up, you know, like you said, destination. When we think of like, that's part of controlling, you know, like there is no end goal. The whole experience is the goal, right? Like to be in it and to allow it to unfold the way it's going to unfold. And it's going to be, there are going to be moments where it's really beautiful and moments where it really is painful. And it's all something to appreciate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's been showing up in the tarot for you lately? What have they been revealing?
A lot of it is allowing myself just to be seen and like stepping into the role or stepping into this thing that I'm supposed to be stepping into. And it's kind of just scary, you know, because one, you're like, well, what is it exactly that I'm supposed to, you know, what is it exactly? And yeah, that's just been coming up a lot. Just not to use my voice and just to be out there, which is scary.
Right. It is for sure. And I could really resonate with that. Like, what is it exactly? Because it's like, come on. Like, I don't know about you, but do you get like guidance? And sometimes it's just like an energetic guidance, and you're like, how am I supposed to like tangibly put that into form? Like, what do you do with that?
Oh, for sure. I'm like, there are moments. I mean, I honestly would say that there are the moments where it's really clear. They're beautiful, right? But they're few, and there's a lot more moments where it's like you said, just okay, this is an energy. You're gonna leave it up to me to dissect it, cool. But that's part of like the work too, right? You know, because it would be so much easier if they would just listen to us. Like like they're like, oh, us listen to you, like you know. But it would be much easier if we all were just like, hey, tell me what to do. And then they'd be like, yeah, this is exactly what you're supposed to do. But it can't be that easy, you know, or at least in my experience. I mean, there might be some folks where it's like, oh, I get the answers all the time. I wish I could have that consistently all of the time. But yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's funny. So much of my guides are like, well, here's this energy. It's like you're tuning to this energy, and it's your job to choose how you want to put it into form. Like literally any form you put it into, as long as you're tuned to this, is going to work. It's going to be right or correct or whatever. You know, it's aligned. And I'm like, okay, well, can you at least give me some ideas? But then, honestly, actually, now that I'm talking about it and saying out loud, sometimes I think because I'll talk to my guides, tell me well, what are some of the possibilities? And then I'll ask, and then somewhere in my life, it'll be reflected back to me. Either I'll be on Instagram, I'll be super triggered by something. I'm like, oh, that's because that's something that I really deeply want to be doing, or I'll see something that really lights me up. So I don't know if that's been your experience too, of like, sometimes you see the tangibles reflected through the triggers or the lighting up moments or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. And similar experience to you, it's like, okay, there's this thing, you know, like we all know, or I'm assuming we all know, like we all get these downloads and these messages of like, this is what you're supposed to be doing, right? And it's up to us, like you said, if we choose to do anything with it, or do we just let it sit there or pass by? And then you go on social media, or you see a friend or someone else doing it, and then you're like, dang it. And then it's like, hey, well, we told you, right? You know, it was up to you on how you chose to either dissect it further and get to do the work of figuring out what it is, or allowing it to, like, just trusting it to unfold the way it's going to unfold. But yeah, like there was something that I've been it's been in my mind to like work on to make. And I was like, oh, you know, my shop's on hold. I don't know if I like really want to do that. And I kept hearing it kept coming up. It's like, you have to do this. It was like coming up in my dreams. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. So I did it yesterday, and I made it yesterday, and all throughout the day I was like getting these hits of like these like there was like 2 emails and like some things popping up on my social media of like with just the concept of what it was, or just a word that's in the description. I'm like, okay, yeah, all right, I hear you. I made it. It's almost ready. Like just me having the conversation. But yeah, it's nice to see that. And again, it's just part of trusting like how things come through and being present with it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that your little example there of just you finally made it, and then the more energy and information came through and was revealed. It's like, okay, you take the next step, and then more stuff comes, and you're like, okay, cool. Then the more stuff comes, and yeah, that's really, I think the thing that's coming to mind here is like we've been talking a lot about the power of co-creating with spirit and with nature and spirit too. Nature is spirit and spirit is nature. Da 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 da. But just like that power of co-creating, especially. I don't know. Have you ever like contemplated the difference between like co-creating versus manifesting? Do you feel a difference between those two? And
That's a good question. I would say for me, when I think of the two, like I feel like they're both very similar.
mm-hmm.
With manifesting though, I feel like that's where it starts to be more like about ourself. Like maybe we heard like, or we were led by something, right? Or we were validated by like, yeah, you should do that or pursue that. But it would be like just me doing it. It would be me just working towards getting that goal or whatever it may be. Whereas, and I'm not connecting in with spirit. Maybe I'm asking for like, depending on like each person's, own spiritual beliefs and practices, but like maybe I'm choosing to do like spell work to attain what it is that I'm wanting. Whereas when I'm co-creating, like with anything, like whether it be like herbal medicine or like any art projects, whatever it may be, I'm in conversation with them. How should this work? Like they're a part of it. Whereas manifesting, I'm like, okay, even though when I'm like in a spell, maybe I'm working with a certain deity, but I'm not necessarily like asking my spiritual team, hey, add your, like for me, that's how my practice looks like. I don't always incorporate my spiritual team with my spell work. It's just me and like my energy or like an element that I'm calling it on, right? So that's what I think of when I think of the two, how they may be different. They're really similar, but
Yeah, I love that. And like one's not better than the other. It's just, I think that's a cool distinction because I think it kind of all gets lumped into one thing sometimes, but there's actually such a subtle variation in how are you actually engaging with yourself and the creative power of the universe to like, and where's that motivation coming from? Where's that intention coming from? And is it coming from something in your ego or something that you just need in your life? Or is it coming from spirit being like, hey, I got this idea. You want to be the vessel? You're like, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for kind of exploring that concept there with me.
Yeah.
So, this is, I love how we've just gotten sort of into the granular nitty gritty of so many beautiful experiences of connecting with spirit and intuition. And tell us about what you offer and how you help people and where they can find you.
So I always feel weird when I say it because I don't like labels, but I'm a healing medium, so I have a healing spiritual practice. Right now, everything's done online, and the focus of my work is really getting to the root of what someone may be experiencing, like any imbalances or emotional blockages within their body, that's keeping them from connecting with, source, connecting with their higher selves, manifesting the life that, not manifest, but like living the life that they want to live, right? Mm-hmm. And so I offer, like, we do a combination of like energy work, like flower medicine, magic if they're game for that too. Or like if they just want like a tarot reading and like check in with their energetic bodies, I offer that as well. And you can find me at ihakekura.com or on Instagram, ihakekura. Yeah, that's where y'all can find, where anyone can find me.
Cool. And that'll all be linked in the show notes, of course. And y'all hit up Liliana for some good support.
I'm excited to hope we'll see once everything kind of, we'll see. I don't know.
Right. Once the future.
Yeah, including like ritual haircuts. I was doing that before, and then I just slow down doing that just because I didn't have a private space. So at this time, I should be having a private space now where I'll just be doing all that, because hair is so important, not like for aesthetic reasons, but it's an extension of ourselves and holds so much information and energy. So I'm excited to have that back in.
Ooh, would you be interested in getting more into hair as in our secret episode?
Yeah, if you want to.
I would love to. I got some hair questions. So about like, the spirit and everything. Oh, that's cool. I love that. Wow. Well, thank you so much for being our guest and just letting me dive in and ask you some stuff there. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I want to ask her about, what's she afraid of right now? And I was like, I don't know if it's okay to ask someone that, but thank you for letting me go there with you.
Oh, I love that, because that clearly is like medicine that I needed too, right? Because then I can hear it and hear myself. Like, yeah. So thank you for that.
Totally. Well, everybody go check out the show notes for the links and check out Liliana. And thank you so much for being our guest and sharing your magic and medicine.
Yeah, thank you.
All the roads are windy.
Listen to over 200 free Earthspeak podcast episodes on your favorite podcast app and visit earthspeak.love to learn about our collective community and workshops.